Hey guys, Samuel Larsen here. I wanted to talk about international e-commerce, or more specifically, e-commerce done outside of the United States. So I see increasing amount of people getting into this where they're looking for markets outside of the US for various reasons. Could be that the US is a little bit more competitive, could be that they are not from the US themselves, could be that perhaps they see an opportunity somewhere else where it's just the market is not served in a way that it is in the States. So increasing amount of people are getting into it, but there's a fine amount of things that you need to know before you kind of jump into chasing some of these smaller markets. And I wanted to provide a little bit of a checklist on what to consider before going and conquering the world. So first of all, of course, is that we are dealing with markets that are a lot more fragmented than the States. Of course, you have different states. They could differ a little bit, but more or less it is kind of the same. And if you go, for example, in Europe, we have a ton of countries that are quite small, and it's more fragmented. There's multiple languages, different shipping methods, very much a lot of things to consider. So that is definitely the number one issue I have with doing international e-commerce, is that you're just going to have to deal with a lot of different cultures, and you can't really just take into account only one culture. So that's a big one. Another thing to keep in mind is that the niches will be smaller. So if you are planning to only operate in a country, in a single country, for example, then you should probably be closer and broader with your niche selection. So you can't just go and be super specific if your market is going to be 10 times smaller than in the States, for example. Another big difference is that there will not be MAP policies, so minimum allowed price policies, often help dropshippers in the US. Now, based on my experience, it's not usually a problem, because margins tend to still be good because of the competition. There's not quite as much competition outside of the States. For example, dropshipping is not as competed yet. And also, when people think of starting, they usually start from the States and then move on to other markets rather than going the other way around. So there's opportunities there, but you need to keep in mind that the markets are smaller, and you can't go too niche, because niches can be really small actually. So instead of going for a niche and targeting very specifically, I would recommend targeting more of an audience. So not so much specific products, but people who like certain type of products and like related stuff that will probably sell well for them as well. So more like in-demand products instead of going for those particular super specific niches. So going for a little bit broader. Now keep in mind also, you want to be aware of the population always. So if in the States you have around 320 million or something like that in terms of population, then if you want to go to UK, for example, you're dealing with 65 million. Specific European countries vary a lot. So that headcount will be very important there. And also languages will be a limiting factor. So you probably don't want to start too multilingual, because it will be a hassle. You don't have that scale yet to deal with all these different countries. So that's something to keep in mind. And for dropshipping and in general shipping, it might be a little bit more difficult, because it's not this uniform thing that has been like done over and over again. Rather, you might be dealing with suppliers that have never done, for example, dropshipping, or they haven't really dealt with e-commerce that much. So they might be stuck in their ways. And you might have to be a little bit more lenient with these kind of people and be better at hunting them down, negotiating with them, and this kind of stuff. Another big thing is taxes. So I don't know about this topic too much, but you have to figure it out before you get any surprises. It is very common for people to forget VATs and then be in trouble at the end of the year when they are found out that they actually didn't charge it. So nothing's worse than running tight margins for a long time thinking you're making money and actually losing money. So that's terrible. Make sure that that doesn't happen to you. Then shipping times. Preferably get a warehouse that operates in at least a couple of your main markets. So if you're doing US and Europe, it's very preferable if you have the same people that you need to deal with for both of those markets. So for example, a lot of people like to use Printful. They are both in the US and Europe, so it's a lot easier to deal with just one company basically compared to having two separate companies, especially with, like, let's say you're doing Shopify. These kind of like multi-vendor shipping things can be a bit complicated, so definitely prefer that way of doing this once you get your own products out there into the warehouse. Also, keep in mind that shipping in general, it will be more difficult and expensive than in the US alone. So there's a lot more variety when it comes to different like national postal services within countries and this kind of stuff. So they tend to bloat shipping times a little bit, and it's a little bit more of a complicated soup to swallow. So keep in mind that. Shipping costs also, these can be painful because you might have countries with long distances. So for example, Canada, Australia, Russia, very long distances. So if you have this, consider that as well, that once you decide to enter a market, or before you actually decide, you count like how much is this going to cost, and like what kind of effect will it have in my margins. Because of this, there are a lot of arguments to selling high value products internationally. It's also easier to compete with retail because like if you have a very high value product, usually you can cut a little bit more of the retail price. The customer has more of an incentive to wait out that period, and you're not so much in trouble when it comes to your shipping times. Also, there's a good chance if you're doing dropshipping is that customers or suppliers, they aren't really used to shipping for dropshippers. So you might need to be able to organize something yourself. So might even be that you need to build your own inventory and handle that part instead of starting with the dropshipping way. And of course, this would have massive implications on like what kind of store you would like to run and how many products you would want to have. So those are all considerations to run through and think about once you are deciding to go international or thinking about going internationally. All right, so that's all. If you would like to work with me, go for zerogurus.com and you can apply there. If you like the video, make sure to like and comment. I'll personally reply to all comments, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.